The vast expanse of the Outer Rim territories stretched endlessly, a void where even light seemed reluctant to linger. Federation influence here was tenuous at best, and uncharted mysteries lay hidden in its shadows. Lieutenant Commander Virok stood on the bridge of the Federation frigate Sentinel, his gaze fixed on the emptiness beyond the viewport. A faint hum of routine activity filled the air, but it did little to dispel the unease that came with patrolling such an isolated region. For Virok, this assignment was a limbo, a mid-tier frigate, neither advanced nor primitive, stationed far from the bustling hubs of civilization. He suspected Captain Maylor felt the same, though the man's ambitions painted his discontent in brighter shades. A sharp beep interrupted the monotony. The comms officer, Ensign Rowler, leaned forward, adjusting his headset. "Lieutenant Commander, we're picking up a faint distress signal," he announced, his voice tinged with curiosity. The bridge crew stirred, their attention converging on the unexpected discovery. "Location?" Virok asked, his tone measured. Rowler tapped on his console, pulling up a star map. "Barren system, uncharted space. No record of any Federation or alien activity in the area." Virok frowned. The Outer Rim was rife with dangers, pirates, anomalies, remnants of forgotten civilizations, yet something about the signal felt off. He turned to Captain Maylor, who had already stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with intrigue. "Dead zones like this are rarely dead," Maylor mused, stroking his chin. "Prepare to change course. Let's investigate. Protocol advises against venturing into uncharted regions without authorization," Virok reminded, though he knew it would fall on deaf ears. "And Protocol never discovered anything remarkable," Maylor replied with a thin smile. "Helm, set a course for the signal source." The crew exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed. As the frigate veered into the unknown, Virok couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far beyond their comprehension. Hours later, the Sentinel arrived at the coordinates. The scene before them was haunting. A massive alien vessel drifted near a decaying star, its surface glinting faintly in the dim light. The ship's design was unlike anything in the Federation's extensive database. It was ancient, metallic, its hull etched with symbols and runes that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. An unnatural stillness surrounded it, as though the vessel itself exuded an aura of foreboding. "No life signs," reported the sensor officer. "But there's faint energy activity. Something is moving, though scans are inconclusive." Virok's jaw tightened. The unease that had lingered on the edges of his thoughts now took center stage. "Recommend we proceed with caution." "Caution is overrated," Maylor said dismissively. "Prepare a boarding team. We'll retrieve anything of value." The frigate docked cautiously with the alien vessel. Virok led the boarding team, his every instinct screaming against the decision. As they entered the ship, a chill enveloped them. The interior was alien and disorienting, a labyrinth of twisting corridors that seemed to defy logic. The walls pulsated faintly, casting eerie, shifting lights that played tricks on their eyes. Every step echoed unnaturally, as though the ship absorbed sound only to release it in unsettling whispers. "Do you hear that?" one of the crew members whispered. "It's like voices." "Keep moving," Virok ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. He kept his weapon ready, scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. They reached a central chamber, vast and circular, dominated by an obelisk at its center. The obelisk was unlike anything they had seen, dark and monolithic, its surface engraved with the same shifting symbols as the ship's hull. It pulsed faintly, each beat resonating through their equipment. Virok approached cautiously, his gaze fixed on the alien artifact. "Lieutenant Commander, these symbols," said one of the scientists. "They're reacting to us." Before Virok could respond, a sharp crackling sound echoed through the chamber. The air grew colder, heavier. One of the team members, stationed near the obelisk, vanished without a sound. The remaining crew froze, their breaths visible in the sudden chill. "Where did they go?" someone whispered, panic creeping into their voice. Stay together, Vyrock commanded, though his own nerves were fraying. Another crew member gasped, pointing to the edges of the chamber. Dark, shadowy figures seemed to watch them, just out of reach, flickering like phantoms. Each time someone tried to approach, the figures disappeared, leaving only a profound sense of unease. Vyrock forced himself to focus. We're retrieving a sample and leaving. Now. One of the scientists carefully extracted a fragment from the obelisk. As soon as the piece was removed, the chamber's faint pulsing grew erratic. Lights along the walls flared and dimmed in rapid succession. The whispers grew louder, incoherent but insistent, as though the ship itself was protesting their intrusion. Move, Vyrock barked, leading the team back through the labyrinthine corridors. Every step felt heavier, every shadow more oppressive. When they finally reached the Sentinel, the ship felt like a sanctuary compared to the nightmare they had left behind. Back aboard, the fragment was secured for analysis. The team tried to shake off the experience, but the tension lingered. Something had followed them back, a presence that seemed to cling to the air, an unshakable feeling of being watched. As the Sentinel began to move away from the alien vessel, the ship's system started to malfunction. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and alarms blared in discordant tones. Vyrock hurried to the bridge, his instincts screaming that their troubles were far from over. Report, he demanded. Scanners are detecting. Objects, Rowler stammered. Multiple objects detaching from the alien ship. They're heading straight for us. The screen displayed the approaching forms, dark, angular, and disturbingly organic. The sight chilled Vyrock to his core. Whatever they had disturbed was not going to let them escape unscathed. The objects approached rapidly, their movements unnervingly fluid, as though they were alive. Dark and angular, they seemed to merge with the void of space, their forms almost imperceptible against the stars. The Sentinel scanners struggled to maintain a lock, reporting erratic readings that defied analysis. Vyrock stood at the center of the bridge, watching the screen with a growing sense of dread. These were no ordinary crafts. They're not machines, said Ensign Rowler, his voice trembling. They're something else. Evasive maneuvers, Vyrock commanded. The frigate's engines roared to life as the helmsman attempted to steer them away. The alien crafts reacted instantly, shifting their trajectory with a precision that seemed impossible. They moved like predators, herding their prey. Captain Maylor leaned forward, his expression a mix of fear and determination. Shields up. Prepare for engagement. Before the command could be fully executed, the first strike hit. A burst of energy erupted from one of the alien crafts, not as a weapon but as a disabling force. The Sentinel's shields flickered and died, leaving the ship vulnerable. Another pulse followed, targeting the engines. The frigate shuddered violently as its propulsion systems were rendered inert. Lights flickered, and an eerie silence settled over the bridge. They're disabling us, Rowler reported, panic lacing his words. Engines offline. Shields are non-responsive. Fire at will, Maylor barked. The Sentinel's weapons systems unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, but the alien crafts moved with unnatural agility, dodging every shot. It was as if they anticipated each attack before it happened. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the enemy closed in. A metallic clang reverberated through the ship, followed by another. Vyrock's blood ran cold. They're boarding us. Within moments, the Sentinel's corridors erupted into chaos. The alien BIPEDS breached the ship with surgical precision, their movements swift and calculated. They were humanoid in shape, but unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Their angular armor shimmered like liquid, adapting to their surroundings with an organic fluidity. Their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets, save for the glowing slits that served as their eyes. In the dim light of the corridor, one of the soldiers caught a glimpse of an unmasked BIPED, its predatory eyes locked onto him, piercing white, with a vibrant iris and a dark, bottomless center. It wasn't just looking at him, it was analyzing him, judging him as a threat or a target. He never had the chance to find out which. The BIPED moved faster than the human eye could track. and the soldier fell without a sound. The crew's resistance was futile. The bipeds didn't attack with brute force, but with a terrifying strategy. They disabled systems, cutting off power to entire sections of the ship. Groups of crew members found themselves isolated, trapped in darkness as the bipeds moved silently through the corridors. Every encounter was methodical, every strike precise. They weren't here to destroy the Sentinel, they were here to claim it. Vyrock led a small team through the chaos, trying to regroup and assess the situation. The ship's AI, strained but still operational, provided updates. Hostile presence detected in multiple sectors. Estimated personnel lost 34%. "They're toying with us," Vyrock muttered. "They could wipe us out if they wanted to." "They're collecting something," one of the engineers said, his voice trembling. "I saw them take equipment items engraved with that symbol, the obelisk." The realization struck Vyrock like a hammer. He stopped in his tracks, his mind racing. "What about Federation tech? Are they taking anything else?" "No," the engineer replied. "They're ignoring it." The pieces began to fall into place. The bipeds weren't random aggressors. They had a purpose, and it revolved around the obelisk. Vyrock accessed a nearby terminal, scanning for any information that could shed light on the symbol's significance. The AI responded with a chilling revelation. The symbol matches records from an ancient legend, it reported. It is linked to a vanished empire known for its devastating power. Historical accounts suggest the empire was destroyed by its own creations, but remnants of those creations were said to wander, seeking vengeance against those who desecrate their legacy. Vyrock's stomach churned. "Captain Maylor," he said into his comms, "we've triggered something far worse than we anticipated. We need to." His transmission was cut short by static. The ship shuddered again as another section lost power. The bipeds were closing in on the bridge. Vyrock rallied his team, determined to reach Maylor before it was too late. As they moved, the whispers from the alien vessel seemed to echo through the corridors of the Sentinel, growing louder with each step. They reached the bridge to find Maylor staring at the central display, his face pale. A single transmission played on repeat, garbled and alien. Yet one word emerged clearly, spoken in a voice that seemed to resonate with both rage and sorrow: retribution. "They're sending us a message," Maylor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But what does it mean?" "It means we've crossed a line," Vyrock replied. "This isn't just about survival. It's about understanding what we've awakened." Before Maylor could respond, the bipeds arrived. The bridge doors groaned as they were forced open, and the bipeds entered, their movements deliberate and unhurried. Vyrock raised his weapon, but the lead biped raised a hand, signaling him to stop. It stepped forward, removing its helmet to reveal a face that was both alien and eerily familiar, a predator's visage, with features that hinted at a long-forgotten connection to humanity. It spoke, its voice a chilling blend of synthetic tones and raw emotion. "You have desecrated what should remain untouched. Your kind has been warned." The transmission ended abruptly, plunging the room into silence. The bipeds turned and left as swiftly as they had come, leaving the crew stunned and the ship in disarray. On the central display, the message remained frozen, a stark reminder of what they had unleashed. "Retribution," Vyrock whispered, the weight of the words settling over him like a shroud. The bridge was left in disarray, the cryptic message lingering in the air like an unspoken curse. Vyrock clenched his fists, his mind racing to piece together the unfolding nightmare. The bipeds' actions were too deliberate, too purposeful. They weren't mere raiders or scavengers, they wanted something specific. And then it hit him: the obelisk fragment. Every move they made pointed to a singular objective: retrieving the artifact that the Sentinel's crew had recklessly taken. In the dimly lit command center, Vyrock approached the ship's AI terminal. "Begin an analysis of the obelisk fragment," he ordered. "We need to know why they want it." The AI responded with its usual mechanical precision. "Fragment contains residual energy signatures tied to dormant technology of unknown origin." Correlation with historical data suggests ties to an ancient empire known for unparalleled advancements and destructive capabilities. Captain Maylor, standing nearby, scoffed. Legends and ghost stories. This is likely some primitive civilization clinging to their relics. No, Virok said sharply, his voice rising. They're not primitive. Everything they've done shows precision and intelligence, and we're the ones who desecrated their artifact. Enough, Maylor snapped. This fragment is Federation property now. Command will see the value in this discovery. Before Virok could argue further, alarms blared across the ship. The BIPEDS had returned, their craft now circling the crippled Sentinel. This time, they weren't just disabling systems, they were overwhelming them. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of targeted strikes, while vital systems began to fail one by one. Virok didn't waste time. All personnel, prepare for close-quarters combat. Divert remaining power to secure key sectors. The crew scrambled into action, but the tension was palpable. Virok knew the odds were stacked against them. He quickly formed a plan, directing engineers to seal off sections of the ship and isolate the BIPEDS in contained areas. If they could funnel their movements, perhaps they could buy themselves time. But the BIPEDS adapted with frightening speed. Each time the crew thought they had trapped them, the BIPEDS turned the ship's own systems against them, hacking into controls, rerouting power, and overriding doors to escape. Their strategy was flawless, as if they anticipated every move. It wasn't just technology, it was intelligence far beyond anything the Federation could comprehend. In the chaos, Virok noticed a pattern. The BIPEDS ignored weapons caches and advanced tech, focusing solely on recovering objects marked with the obelisk symbol. He shared his observation with the senior officers, urgency lacing his voice. This isn't random. They don't care about us, they care about the fragment. A brief silence followed before one of the scientists spoke up, her face pale. The fragment isn't just a relic. It's a key to what Virok demanded, to unlocking their technology, she replied. Or worse, something dormant and far more dangerous. Virok's stomach churned. The obelisk had been pulsating with energy before they removed the fragment. What if taking it had triggered something? What if their actions had reawakened whatever the BIPEDS feared? Despite the growing evidence, Maylor refused to relent. We're not handing it over, he said firmly. This is our discovery, and Command will recognize its importance. We'll fight to keep it. Virok felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Every instinct screamed that keeping the fragment would doom them all. The BIPEDS weren't invaders, they were guardians, and the Sentinel had violated a sacred boundary. If they didn't act soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. Tension reached a breaking point when a group of junior officers approached Virok in secret. Lieutenant Commander, we can't follow Maylor's orders anymore, one of them said, her voice trembling. He's going to get us all killed. Virok hesitated. Mutiny was a last resort, but he knew they were out of time. We return the fragment, he said finally, his voice steady. If there's any chance of stopping this, it's the only way. With the officer's help, Virok orchestrated a plan. While Maylor remained fixated on the bridge, the group secured the fragment and prepared to return it to the BIPEDS vessel. Every step was fraught with danger. The BIPEDS had pushed deeper into the ship, their presence an ever-looming threat. Whispers filled the corridors and the shadows seemed alive, watching their every move. As they neared the airlock, the ship shuddered violently. One of the BIPEDS had breached their path, its angular armor glinting in the dim emergency lights. It stood motionless for a moment, its head tilted, as if studying them. Then, with a fluid motion, it stepped aside, allowing them to pass. Virok's breath caught. Was this a sign of trust, or a warning? They reached the airlock, where a small shuttle waited to carry the fragment back to the alien vessel. Virok felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they could end this without further bloodshed. But just as the shuttle prepared to launch, the bridge comms crackled to life. Stand down, Virok Maylor's voice thundered. This is treason. Return to the bridge immediately. Virok ignored him, his focus unwavering. We're out of options. This is the only way. Before Malor could respond, the shuttle launched, carrying the fragment toward the alien vessel. Virok watched from the viewport as it disappeared into the darkness. A tense silence followed, broken only by the distant hum of the ship's failing systems. Then, without warning, the BIPEDS leader appeared on the bridge. The air seemed to grow heavier, charged with an unspoken authority. Its unmasked face was a testament to its alien nature, yet there was a haunting familiarity in its eyes. It gazed at the crew, its expression unreadable. "You have desecrated what should remain untouched," it said, its voice resonating like a distant storm. "Your kind has been warned." Virok felt a chill run through him. The words carried a weight that transcended language, a warning not just for the Sentinel, but for the Federation itself. The air on the bridge felt impossibly heavy, as though the weight of the BIPEDS warning had sunk into every surface of the room. Virok stood frozen, his breath shallow, while the crew dared not move under the penetrating gaze of the BIPEDS leader. The unmasked being loomed, radiating an ancient authority that spoke of a power far beyond the Federation's grasp. The words it had spoken still echoed in Virok's mind. They weren't just a warning, they were an indictment. Slowly, Virok stepped forward. His hand trembled as he presented the obelisk fragment, cradled in a protective casing. "We didn't understand," he said, his voice breaking the oppressive silence. "Take it. We mean no harm." The leader's gaze didn't waver as it reached out, its fingers brushing the fragment with a reverence that sent a shiver down Virok's spine. The BIPEDS had come for this, but their reaction was not triumph, it was resignation. When the leader spoke again, its voice carried an edge of sorrow, as if this exchange had confirmed its deepest fears. "Your actions have awakened what should remain dormant," it said. "You call yourselves explorers, but your kind destroys more than it creates. The reckoning begins." Virok's chest tightened. "What reckoning? What have we done?" The leader didn't answer. It turned, signaling to its soldiers, who began to withdraw from the bridge. For a fleeting moment, Virok thought the nightmare was over. But as the BIPEDS departed, they left behind one final act of defiance. The ship's FTL drive powered down, its systems rendered inert by a precise and devastating pulse. The Sentinel, once a proud vessel of exploration, was now a broken relic adrift in the void. The crew scrambled to assess the damage. Systems were offline across the board, and any hope of reinforcements was extinguished. Virok stood at the viewport, watching as the BIPEDS fleet vanished into the darkness. They had achieved their goal, but they had also left a chilling parting gift. A new transmission appeared on the Sentinel's main display, its coordinates etched in alien symbols. "What's that?" asked Rowler, his voice trembling. Virok stared at the coordinates. He didn't know where they led, but he understood their meaning. It was a warning, or perhaps an invitation to the Federation. Either way, it wasn't over. When the Sentinel finally limped back into Federation-controlled space, Virok was prepared to face judgment. His report detailed every harrowing moment, every decision made, and the consequences of their actions. Yet, as he stood before the Federation Council, the weight of his words seemed to evaporate in the room's cold indifference. The councilors, resplendent in their confidence and authority, dismissed his warnings as paranoia. "The Federation has faced countless threats," one councilor said. "This is no different. We will prepare, and we will prevail." Virok's protests fell on deaf ears. He left the chamber knowing the truth: they had learned nothing. The Federation's arrogance, its unshakable belief in its dominance, would lead it straight into the jaws of destruction. The coordinates left by the BIPEDS would not serve as a warning, they would be treated as a challenge. Preparations for militarization were already underway, spurred on by Malor's embellished account of their victory. Disillusioned and exhausted, Virok retreated to his quarters, where the obelisk fragment awaited further study. Its surface shimmered faintly, the symbols shifting in a way that made his head throb if he stared too long. Despite the fear it invoked, he couldn't bring himself to destroy it. The fragment held answers, truths that the bipeds dared not speak aloud. The analysis began, the Sentinel's damaged systems barely functional enough to process the fragment's data. Hours passed as Virok pored over the results, piecing together fragments of history hidden in the alien artifact. What he uncovered turned his blood to ice. The empire they had disturbed hadn't been destroyed, as the Federation's myths had suggested. It had gone dormant, waiting for the right conditions to rise again. The bipeds had been guardians, not aggressors. Their fear wasn't of the obelisk fragment itself, but of what it represented, a key to unlocking the power of the ancient empire. And now, the Federation's meddling had set those conditions in motion. The fragment was a beacon, calling out to something in the dark. Virok's terminal flickered as the analysis concluded. A single message appeared, simple yet horrifying in its implications: retribution begins. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The biped's warning had been more than just a condemnation, it had been a prophecy. The reckoning they spoke of wasn't theirs to deliver, it was the return of a force the galaxy had long forgotten. And the Federation, blinded by its ambition, was walking straight into its embrace. For a moment, Virok considered abandoning his post, disappearing into the farthest reaches of space where no one would find him. But he knew there was no escape. Whatever was coming would consume everything in its path. The best he could do was prepare for the inevitable, even if no one else would listen. He returned his gaze to the obelisk fragment, its symbols now glowing with an eerie light. The final line of the transmission echoed in his mind: "Your kind has been warned." Yet the Federation had chosen not to heed it. They had chosen pride over caution, arrogance over survival. As Virok stared into the shifting symbols, the light in his quarters dimmed, leaving only the fragment's glow to illuminate his face. His heart sank under the weight of realization the bipeds hadn't come to stop the reckoning. They had come to ensure it would be carried out. The silence that followed was deafening.